If you've been following this series on the function of emotions, we've talked about sadness, shame, guilt, and other emotional experiences that are part of being human. Today, we're talking about something that sits underneath many emotional experiences, the stress response system, and more specifically, anxiety. And I saved this one for the end part of the series intentionally, because stress and anxiety aren't just emotions, they're survival mechanisms. They are deeply wired into our nervous system. They're automatic, they're fast, and they're not broken. But they are often misunderstood. So today we're going to talk about the function of the stress response, the physiology behind it, fight, flight, freeze, and the lesser-known fawn, anxiety and what it's actually trying to do, why people become anxious about being anxious, and how to regulate anxiety, not eliminate it. Because as you've heard me say before, the goal is not emotional control. The goal is emotional regulation. Welcome to Deliver Us from Feelings, a podcast where psychology gets real, emotions make sense, and being human feels a little less confusing. I'm your host, Rita, a cognitive behavior therapist and emotional resilience coach, and I help people understand their emotions, behaviors, and relationships in ways that are practical, compassionate, and actually usable in real life. So grab a glass of water, take a deep breath, and settle in, because we're about to get into it. Let's start with stress. Stress is not the enemy. Stress is information. More specifically, stress is your nervous system detecting demand, pressure, or possible threat, and preparing you to respond. Yes, you've heard me correctly. Stress is helpful. Stress is not bad. It's unmanaged stress, however, that's problematic. Your body does not distinguish very well between physical threat, emotional threat, social threat, imagined threat, or future threat. Your nervous system just asks one question: is this safe, or do I need to prepare? And when the answer is, I might need to prepare, the sympathetic nervous system activates. This is what we call the stress response. This system evolved to keep humans alive. Without it, our ancestors wouldn't have survived long enough for us to be here. Stress is not dysfunction. Stress is protection. The problem today is not that we have a stress response. It's that the system gets activated far more often than it was designed to. Our nervous systems were built for predators, survival threats, immediate danger, not email notifications or financial pressure or relationship uncertainty or social comparison, something that's happening overwhelmingly thanks to social media platforms, or constant news cycles, thanks internet and CNN, or overthinking at 2 a.m., thanks work or relationships. But the system responds anyway, even if it wasn't designed to run this often, because that's its job. Let me go back to something I said. Imagined threat is the same to your brain as actual threat. Your brain can't tell the difference. Imagined threat can be remembering something that already happened. It can be trying to predict what is yet to come, something we call forecasting in cognitive therapy. Your brain responds the same way to imagined threat as to when you experience an actual threat in real time. Yes, wild. That's how powerful thought is. A thought about something stressful will create the same type of stress response as experiencing the stress in real time. This is why when we teach regulation, we use techniques to try to focus your mind away from those thoughts. Let's talk about what actually happens in the brain and body when you are experiencing stress. At the center of the stress response is a part of the brain called the amygdala, and I have heard it pronounced a few different ways. Amygdala. I like the way amygdala kind of rolls off the tongue, so that's the way I choose to pronounce it. The amygdala is the brain's threat detector. And you have two, because your brain is symmetrical. You have one slightly behind your ear on the inside of your skull, on the left and right side of your head. The amygdala's job is simple: detect danger, activate survival. It's fast and automatic. When the amygdala perceives threat, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, releasing adrenaline, cortisol, and glucose into the bloodstream. You'll notice an increased heart rate, faster breathing, and muscle tension. Your body prepares to act immediately. I mean, it's like exercising without the exercise. This is why we sweat when we feel anxious or stressed. Stress is an activator. Your heart is beating quickly. Your breathing changes in response to that. And your muscles are fired up, just like when you exercise. Yet you could be sitting perfectly still. Why is that? Stress is an activator to help you survive by fighting, which isn't necessarily fighting people or predators, but maybe pushing objects out of the way so you can evacuate, or opening a window or climbing. It's the instinctual fight for survival. Flighting, which is running away. Freezing or hiding or hunkering down until danger passes, but reserving energy for bursts or changing hiding places when necessary. And fawning, which we'll talk about in just a moment. None of these are personality traits. None of these are weaknesses. They are adaptive survival strategies. I mean, folks, those are behaviors. That's your body in motion. Let's briefly walk through them in a little bit more detail. Okay, fight. This response mobilizes energy toward confrontation or protection. It can look like anger, defensiveness, irritability, or control. The function: protect, boundaries, and safety. Now, this description really kind of fits in interpersonal context, but remember, sometimes when we feel threatened or we're in perceived danger, fight might be our body in motion to try to move things or climb or kick or whatever, if we're in a space that we feel like we need to get out of. And that ties into the flight, which is the response that mobilizes energy toward escape. It can look like worry, restlessness, overworking, avoidance, or perfectionism. The function of flight is to create distance from threat. And honestly, these 4 F's can work in harmony with one another. It doesn't have to be one or another. Oftentimes there can be hybrids, combinations of each of these kind of working protectively together. And fight and flight are often working in harmony together, very much like 2 people riding on a tandem bicycle. The next one is freeze. This response conserves energy when action feels impossible. It can look like numbness, shutdown, indecision, or disassociation. The function: survive overwhelming threat. And fawn. This is the 4th F. This response seeks safety through connection or appeasement. It can look like people-pleasing, conflict avoidance, or over-accommodating. And the function: maintain relational safety. All of these responses are intelligent adaptations. The nervous system is always asking, what response gives the best chance of getting through this situation, even when it doesn't look logical from the outside? This is why sometimes people will ask about their behavior afterwards. Why did I do that? Or why didn't I do that? The answer is simple. Your brain decides instantly and selects the behavior it estimates will give you your best chance at survival. If it were left up to you, meaning the part of you that uses executive functions and decisions based on logic and reason, it would take too much time. Let me put it into an example. Sometimes it can be hard to make a decision. Imagine if you were to wonder, which way should I jump, left or right, as an out-of-control vehicle is coming at you quickly. By the time you even have that thought in your head, bam, it's too late. Your stress response is efficient and instantaneous for this reason. Don't think, just act. Survive. This can be really confusing for people. Something that the brain is really smart about, and this is what is meant by it's an intelligent adaptation. Survival isn't based on the intelligent space in your brain, which is your cerebral cortex, or the part of that called the frontal lobe, which sits right behind your forehead. Remember, the amygdala are these two little walnut-looking things that are part of your brain that sit just inside your skull, right behind on either side of your ears. When they get turned on, it's like they take over. It's like your brain is a car and they become the driver. But most of the time, the part of your brain, the frontal lobe, where your executive functions and a lot of logic and reason is housed, usually that's the driver. Think of a limousine, and that's the limo driver. And the passengers in the back, and that's your sympathetic nervous system. Suddenly, the brain perceives danger. It's like they switch seats. It's like now the limo driver's in the back chewing gum and reading the paper, and the amygdala, your sympathetic nervous system, is the one in charge. They're the driver, and they're telling everybody and everything, which is your brain and your body, your behavior, your actions, what to do. And that's your 4 Fs. So survival isn't rooted in logic and reason in that moment. Your survival is based on your very smart brain. And in this part of your brain, your sympathetic nervous system, assessing what's going on, it's using past and present information, things it's learned, things it's assessing in that moment, to make a split and instantaneous decision rooted in statistics. What is my best option at survival right now? And it selects before we even know what's going on. It's amazing, and it's so fast, which is why when something happens, a lot of the times afterwards, we're kind of confused and go, what just happened? In my example of something hurling at your body, and before you know it, your body has already jumped. And that's when you kind of realize what just happened. It's that fast. That's how fast your sympathetic nervous system comes on, assesses, right? Like, that's amazing. It assesses the situation. It also calculates risk and survival outcomes. And it makes a choice. And it makes your body move before you even know what's going on. It's incredible. That is by design. That is by design. Your brain is really good at math, even if you don't think you are, and it's good at statistics. It's about your chances at survival. Unfortunately, it's not a guarantee, but it gives us good odds, and it does allow us to survive. What can happen afterwards is we might try to use our logic and reason to try to understand something that's truly, really nonsensical, like something happened that was really scary. That doesn't fit with our everyday understanding maybe of our life, right? In my example, cars, fortunately, hopefully aren't hurtling at you out of control every day or every hour of the day. So if it were to happen, it would be incredibly, incredibly perplexing to your brain. Hey, this is out of my norm. This is out of my usual. Thank goodness. I don't know where to fit this information. It can feel really surreal and nonsensical. That doesn't stop the other part of our brain once it comes back online for trying to add logic or reason in why we did something. This can be especially true for people who survive some sort of an assault. Oftentimes, the brain selects freeze. It evaluates, hey, if I fight back, that might make me in more danger. Hey, I'm kind of trapped here. There's no place for me to escape from or go to. Maybe if I even cry out for help, that might make the situation worse for me. It might intensify danger. And maybe our brain has already tried other things like fawning and it didn't work. So this ability for us to disassociate or freeze is truly an adaptive response. But people who survive situations like that oftentimes, Again, when their logic and reason part of their brain comes back online, might say, I don't know why I didn't kick or fight back or yell. And that can be very confusing for them. But it is because your brain selected, hey, this shutdown, this disassociation, this freeze response is your best odds right now. And while sometimes we physically survive something, sometimes our emotional survival takes a little bit longer. And that's what psychotherapy can help people come to understand. And also it's important to understand, to heal from something that happens that's that extreme. Okay, just a little bit about that part. Now we're going to move on to understanding a little bit more about anxiety. If fear is about present danger, because honestly, that's what we were talking about with the stress response. Fear, the removal of control, the absence of safety. Fear. Fear is about present danger. Anxiety is about anticipated danger. Anxiety is future-oriented. Its function is preparation. I'm up in New England, and in the northern part of the United States, we've been getting a lot of really bad weather. So I always use weather to talk about this phenomenon, this ability that human beings have to predict and then prepare. Because prediction is something that is really functional. It's something our brain is very unique. I don't know that any other organisms on the planet are able to predict in the same way that human beings can. And, I mean, we create other types of operations, machinery, technology that allows us to do this. And it's not that the prediction gives us any more control over the weather. It's our ability to prepare for weather. Why? Because it increases our, there it is again, our odds, our chances at survival. If we didn't know a storm was coming, maybe we would still survive it, but our chances increase when we can be prepared. And this is something that human beings also really struggle with, being blindsided. We hate when we can't see what's coming. So our ability to predict resonates with a sense of control, and ultimately preparing is something that we can do. Again, there's behavior. It's something that we can do that helps stabilize and makes us feel like we have some element of control. Anxiety says, what if something goes wrong? What should we do about that? How do we prevent pain or harm? Anxiety is a prediction system. And like any prediction system, even our weather, sometimes it overestimates, sometimes it gets it wrong. And sometimes with our prediction system, it overestimates the risk. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you. It just means your anxiety is trying to protect you. And again, nothing in this world is perfect, so anxiety also isn't a perfect system. Anxiety is essentially your brain saying, let's prepare just in case, right? Sometimes we make predictions. Maybe it's, hey, this could happen, not this will happen. And in fact, oftentimes that is the nature of a prediction, even with our weather. It's a likelihood of something happening, not always a guarantee that it will. And sometimes just in case becomes all the time for the anxious mind, right? Something that we might be saying, hey, maybe this can happen. Let me be prepared. Imagine if every day we were expecting a winter snow blizzard. Oh, that would be exhausting to always be anticipating some sort of, I don't know, unfortunate thing we're not looking forward to or could potentially cause hazard or harm in our life, certainly inconvenience. And we were preparing for it every day, only for it to never come. I mean, that would truly be exhausting and a waste of our precious energy. So that's why we want to learn how to manage it, right? So that we're not wasting our precious energy, that we're conserving it, and we're making this very important functional system work a little bit more efficiently, just like the furnace in your house or the air conditioning in your home if you live in a really hot place. We don't want that system to run any more than it needs to because it costs us energy, and ultimately that shows up in monetary finances we have to pay for that fuel. Same within your body. Remember, your body doesn't have an infinite supply of energy. You want to conserve it, and you want that system to run a little more efficiently so it doesn't burn itself out. So here's something really important about anxiety. People don't just experience anxiety, they often experience anxiety about being anxious. This is what we call secondary anxiety, and honestly, secondary anxiety can show up to any primary emotion. People might get anxious when they feel anything really, sad, happy, uncomfortable, guilty. So this secondary anxiety, I treat anxiety disorders, so I see this very common kind of phenomenon where people will have anxiety and then they become anxious at their anxiety. It's kind of this feeling of, why do I feel like this? Or what's wrong with me? Or what if I panic? Or what if I can't handle this anxiety? Or this feeling needs to stop. It's kind of a feeling of those things when anxiety shows up in their body. Now, the nervous system isn't just reacting to a situation. It's reacting to the feeling itself. And this amplifies the cycle. The original anxiety might have been manageable, but fear of the anxiety makes it bigger and louder. Not because something's wrong with you, but because your nervous system is trying to help you regain a sense of control. Yeah, there's that word again, right? Our body doesn't like it when it doesn't feel like it's in control, even of something happening in itself. Here's another thing about anxiety. We could say that anxiety is the flight part of the 4 F's. It gives us activating energy to run away. It promotes the sensation of wanting to escape from danger or avoid it altogether. And sometimes that's necessary, right? That's its function. But can we do this all the time? No, we can't avoid everything that makes us feel anxious. And not everything our brain perceives as threatening actually is. Our brain often treats the unknown as dangerous, when really the unknown is just the unknown. But right earlier I said the brain really hates not knowing. When it doesn't know what to do. When it doesn't know what is coming, it doesn't know how to prepare or plan. And when we don't know what to do, that makes us feel incredibly uncomfortable. And usually the resulting discomfort is called anxious. When we can't predict, we can't plan. And it's the doing, the behavior, the fight or the flight or the fawn or the freeze or the planning and the preparing that makes us feel safe. In the face of fear or danger, imagined or real. Now here's something really important. When people become anxious about being anxious, it often happens because they are, without realizing it, trying to escape the feeling of anxiety itself. And that's impossible. Anxiety activates the urge to escape. That's its job. But we can only evacuate physical spaces, not internal ones. So when you try to regain control by escaping the sensation of anxiety in your body, the anxiety actually becomes more intense. Think of it this way. If you were in a building and smelled smoke or heard people exiting, you would feel anxious and get the urge to leave. That would be your stress response system working exactly as designed. But can you do that inside your own body? Nope. Your brain doesn't fully understand that difference, though. The urge to escape feels very real, and so does the anxiety, whatever the original trigger may be. That secondary anxiety is the brain essentially shouting, "Get out, leave, right now!" And your body is responding, "I can't." That mismatch amplifies the system and can even lead to panic. Imagine you were in that smoky building and you went to open the door to exit, but the door was stuck. Your nervous system wouldn't calmly say, "No, well, I'll just do some breathing." No, your nervous system would escalate. Fight energy would kick in. you'd push harder, try again. And if the door still didn't open, panic would likely follow. That's what secondary anxiety can feel like internally. But here's the good news. You are not actually trapped in a burning building, even though your brain is reacting as if you are. This is where awareness and assessment become powerful tools. We pause and ask, am I in danger right now? For most of us, most of the time, the answer, fortunately, is no, even though the amygdala is signaling yes. That pause helps the thinking part of the brain. Remember the limo driver who gets kicked to the back seat? He's chewing gum and reading the newspaper or scrolling on his phone while the sympathetic nervous system takes over and starts driving the car. And it's driving the car in that really kind of scary way. Well, we want them to switch back into their regular places, right? So that pause helps the thinking part of the brain, your cerebral cortex, come back online. It helps restore a sense of control. Then we move into managing and regulating the anxiety instead of trying to escape from it. And the first step in that process is normalizing it. This is often the work in psychotherapy, but it doesn't have to be the only place where you can practice that. Secondary anxiety is a very real phenomenon in many anxiety disorders, and sometimes it requires more than self-help tools. It may require support, guidance, and practice learning how to stay present with anxiety instead of running from it. Because paradoxically, when we stop trying to escape anxiety, it often becomes more manageable. I often remind my clients that anxiety is normal and healthy, just like all emotions. Anxiety is part of our survival system. It becomes a concern when it's on all the time, just like our regular stress response. So if anxiety is on all the time, or it feels disproportionate to the situation, or, importantly, it interferes with your daily functioning, that may indicate an underlying anxiety disorder. And I want to say something important here. This podcast is not here to diagnose you. It's about educating you so you can better understand what might be typical emotional functioning versus when it might make sense to seek professional support. And it never hurts to get evaluated, even if you're unsure. Getting evaluated doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or that you can't handle something. Think about physical health. If you catch a cold, we don't say there's something wrong with you as a person. We don't assume your immune system is broken. We understand that sometimes a virus overwhelms the system's ability to manage it. And interestingly, the symptoms of being sick are often the immune system doing its job and fighting the virus off. We want to think about mental health in a similar way. Developing a mental health disorder does not mean you are broken or flawed. It often means your regulation system is overwhelmed. And just like with physical health, support can help. Psychotherapy and psychoeducational coaching can be powerful ways to learn skills that strengthen regulation and resilience. This is what we call emotional fitness or emotional wellness. You can be a healthy person and still get sick. Healthy habits reduce risk. Oh, there's that word again, right? Healthy habits reduce risk. Unfortunately, they don't eliminate it. You can eat well and sleep enough and wash your hands and still catch a cold. And the same is true for mental health. Part of building resilience is doing exactly what you're doing right now, learning about emotions and regulation. Listening to this podcast is actually a healthy behavior. Health isn't defined by never struggling or the absence of illness or disease. Health is built through choices and habits and awareness and support. And that's the foundation too for emotional health and wellness and emotional fitness. Let's do a short regulation practice before we move on. Let's pause for a moment and practice together. Nothing dramatic, nothing complicated, just a little reset. If you're driving, please keep your eyes open and just listen. If you're sitting somewhere comfortable, you might soften your gaze or close your eyes. First, just notice your breathing without changing it. No fixing, no controlling, just noticing. Now gently slow the exhale, not the inhale, just your exhale. Try 3 slow breaths together. Inhale in, and a slow exhale out, maybe through your mouth. Maybe inhale in through your nose. Let's try it again. Give yourself a mild pause, and then focus on that exhale. Slowly exhale that air out through your mouth. Feel it leave your lungs. Feel your chest compress. Feel that air flow up out of your chest, through your throat, and out of your mouth. Maybe you even hear it. One more time. Take a normal inhale. And if it feels good to do so, as you do your longer exhale, you can focus on the sensation of the breath as we did the last one, or you can count, maybe to the number 5 or the number 7, whatever seems right. Great. You're doing really well. Now, notice your body. Where are you making contact with the chair or the floor or the ground beneath you? Just feel that support for a moment. You don't have to be calm. You don't have to feel different. You're just reminding your nervous system, I am here. I am safe. I can slow down. That's regulation. It's not eliminating anxiety. It's not forcing calm. It's just helping the system settle. You're giving your nervous system real-time data that you can feel stressed or afraid or anxious and still be safe all at the same time. You can do it. This just takes practice. Even a small pause like this helps the nervous system shift out of alarm mode. And this is something you can do anywhere, at any time. Remind yourself, I'm okay. Anxiety is something happening in my body, not to my body. So this is where my favorite analogy comes from. The amygdala is like a little sleeping baby. If you have any experience with babies, you'll know, what do babies do? Babies sleep and babies cry. And it takes nothing to wake a sleeping baby. A small noise, a shift in temperature, a change in light, instant activation. But once the baby wakes up and starts crying, they do not go back to sleep instantly, do they? It takes soothing and time and energy. The stress response works pretty much the same way. Activation is fast, but regulation is a lot slower. Think about that. All you have to do is, drop something and the baby wakes up. Then you have to pick the baby up. You have to rock the baby, maybe feed the baby, maybe sing to the baby, right? We'd have all our tricks that try to help that baby calm and go back to sleep. Your sympathetic nervous system, it comes online instantaneously and effortlessly. And as we learned, that is by design. That is no accident. That helps you survive. But that system doesn't turn off the same way it turns on. And that can be frustrating, right? It would be great if we had like a little switch, like a light. I mean, it turns on that way. Flip, lights on, flip, lights off. But your sympathetic nervous system is like that little baby. Doesn't take anything to wake her up. But it's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of patience and maybe a whole lot of effort to help that system go back to sleep. And that's okay. That's not a sign of your failure, that you can't do something right. It just is the way the system works. And it takes some getting used to. The number one way to do that is breathing slowly and focusing on your exhale. Why the exhale? All I can tell you is that the exhale itself really helps engage your relaxation response, your rest and digest response. It kicks on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a part of your nervous system that helps with that regulation. And that's why. Why we're designed that way, I couldn't tell you. You'll have to ask God or Mother Nature or whomever your higher power is, whatever you believe, however we came into existence. All I can tell you is that's why, but not why we're made that way. But it's good information, right? Gives us something to work with. We don't have to know why we're made that way. We just have to know we're made that way because it empowers us to take control back. We might not have control over a situation. We might not have control over our nervous system activating. When the amygdala and your cerebral cortex switch places in the limousine, one becomes the driver and the other one gets kicked back to the back seat, we don't really have control over that, do we? And that can feel alarming for sure. But you do have control over taking that pause and practicing in your day-to-day. You have control over being mindful. Hey, can I tell myself I'm okay? Can I evaluate this and see, am I really in danger, or does it just seem like that? Is my mind just kind of telling me, right? Remember, your amygdala can't tell the difference between clear and present danger and imagined danger. And that's okay. That happens in all our brains. Something else you can do is assess the intensity of your emotion. This could be your stress, this could be your anxiety, it really can be any emotion. But you can use a simple scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being as strong as you can feel something. And yes, this is very much like the pain scale if you've ever been, to the hospital or had surgery or something. Give your emotion a score. The goal is to stabilize that score and reduce it a point or two at the most. So if you're feeling anxious and you check in with yourself and say, hey, how anxious am I? I'm at a 7. The goal is to stabilize, keep you at a 7 so it doesn't go up to a 8 or a 10. And then by continuing to use some regulation strategies, reduce that 7 maybe down to a 6 or even a 5, which is much more comfortable than a 7. Another helpful question is to ask yourself, does the intensity of this emotion match the situation? So if your emotion is situational, maybe there is some sort of interpersonal thing happening that's causing you to feel anxious or upset. Maybe you have something up and coming in your future, something at work, a presentation you have to do, or a problem in your life. Is the intensity of your emotion, does it match the situation? Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But when anxiety becomes disproportionate, it's often because the brain is adding things like catastrophic thinking and forecasting and worst case scenario prediction or overestimation of danger or underestimation of your ability to cope with something. These are cognitive amplifiers. They don't create anxiety from nothing. They increase the volume. They're what can take something that might be at a 4 and turn it up to a 7 or an 8. Cognitive behavior therapy often focuses here, not by eliminating the anxiety or giving you, only sugar-coated positive thinking all the time, but by doing something called right-sizing it. The actual term is reappraisal or reframing. Those are two cognitive tools. Now, those are things that you can learn from a mental health coach or a psychologist or psychotherapist. And the last part is regulating the anxiety. And there's different ways we can do that. Again, the goal is not to eliminate anxiety. That would mean eliminating the survival system, and we don't want to do that. We want flexibility. Regulation means helping the nervous system return to baseline. So some examples include, and these would be something with body regulation, so your breathing, maybe a temperature change, so using an ice pack or cold water. I see that in shows and movies, people splashing cold water on their face, and I'm thinking, that actress has a ton of makeup on. Nobody's doing that in real life. But you can certainly use an ice pack and put that on your forehead, on the back of your neck or chest or wherever it feels comfortable on your body. Movement, this could be going for a walk, gentle yoga, movement, stretches, whatever feels good. Sensory tools, things like fidgets and weighted pressure. I know weighted blankets and weighted lap pads are kind of the rage right now, and that's why that compression can feel really good on your nervous system. I tell people, try different things, see how your body responds. There's no one size fits all, and certainly different situations, different emotions that you feel, different tools are going to work. And often, having different things in different places. If you're at work, you might not be able to lie down with a weighted blanket, but having a weighted lap pad is maybe something you could have at your desk, or fidgets or different things, having ice packs. Sometimes you will have more access to things at home than you do at work or other places that you go in your life. But again, it's kind of having a little coping toolbox. You could have something for the car, whatever, wherever you go, something to think about. Why? Because it's something you can do. This restores the feeling of control. So some of the things that we teach people in therapy that go with cognitive therapy and other types of therapies, things that are reality testing, naming the emotion, slowing your thoughts, reframing your thoughts, things like that. Those are tools that people can learn. And some of the emotional regulation, this is where acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectic behavior therapy, those are two really great therapies to help with the actual working through of the emotion. That means we're allowing the feeling. We're developing things like self-compassion, stress tolerance. Sometimes mindfulness-based stress reduction can be a really helpful agent in the process of this because it allows that slowing down. In acceptance and commitment therapy, something called cognitive diffusion is really important in helping people be able to do this. There's probably some other types of therapies that are branch-offs of these overheads that can really help people do that. But this is a really important part. Exposure therapy is an aspect of this where it's, again, just the practice of, I call it holding space for the emotion in your body. It's kind of like creating intimacy with yourself where something uncomfortable shows up in your body. And we might have that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, get rid of it. But what we do instead is we accept it. And what that means, isn't drowning in it or suffering indefinitely with it. It's a process of working through it. The way out is through. It's a common mantra I say to myself, and it's something I teach my clients. The way out is through. But it's not as simple as that. It never is. Psychotherapy wouldn't exist. Podcasts like this wouldn't exist if it was that simple. But it is possible. And the more you practice it, like anything, the more you practice it, it may never be easy, but it gets easier because that's what learning is. Something gets easier for us. And we reprogram our nervous system. And that's really important. And again, why? Because it's something we can do. That restabilizes that sense of control. Hey, there's something out of control, but this is what I'm doing in response. I'm breathing, I'm settling, I'm focusing, just like soothing that baby. So yes, stress and anxiety are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that your nervous system is trying to protect you. I always tell people, if you're feeling an emotion, good news, your nervous system is working and it's healthy. You just might not know what to do with that emotion, and that's okay. Again, that's what these supports are for, to teach you and support you and help you and normalize you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're normal. The work is not to silence the system. The work is to understand it, work with it, and regulate it. Because emotional health isn't about never feeling activated. It's about knowing how to come back. And that, my dears, is emotional fitness. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode helped you feel a little more understood, a little less alone, or reminded you that it really is hard being human sometimes, I'd love for you to follow the podcast so you don't miss what's next. Our next episode, we wrap up this series with emotions, and we're going to talk about anger and frustration. Have a question about how to be human? Send it to deliverusfromfeelings@gmail.com. Take care of your mind, honor your feelings, and remember, a healthy relationship with others starts with a healthy relationship with yourself. I'll see you next time.